Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Talking Tuong, the weekly quarantine show where I get to talk to my friends near and far to talk about the cinematic event of the year. Maybe that might be a lot to say. Honestly, it kind of feels like that to me. But before we get into all of that, of course, I have to introduce my first guest. My first guest here, a really great friend of mine. She is a first timer in podcasting in general in the pod cavern. She made like notes and stuff like that. I'm not used to my guests doing that. She like over prepared and was nervous. She's like, is my audio okay? She banned her parents from the house. She just texted her brother being like, don't use the internet. And I appreciate that, honestly. I am talking about Justine Phan, everyone. Hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm waving as if y'all can see, but
Yeah,
I'm super
Justine,
excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
since it's your first podcast, you should know podcasting is an audio
Yes, I,
platform.
I don't know I don't know why I just waved
That's
as
okay.
if
Some
people
people
can
do
see
video
me.
podcasts, but you
Yeah,
know what?
I don't like that.
Why? I mean, I know it's really popular, and maybe I'm missing out on a demographic out there, but I find the reason to listen to podcasts is that you're able to put it on your phone and walk around doing whatever you want. Not like I don't want to stare at my screen and watch people talk, you know?
It's almost like a YouTube video, so that's why it's like, what's even the
Almost.
point? Is it a podcast if you're just gonna be, I guess, filming yourself talking about something? I don't know. Sure,
Exactly.
there's a
And
whole discourse around that, but
with video
oh,
podcasts, now I'm just bashing on video
yeah.
podcasts. With video, let me just tell you a thing or two about video podcasts. I'm just like, well, Talking Tongue, I don't edit very much, but other podcasts, I edit a lot because sometimes I'm like, and I sound not stupid, but like I don't know how to articulate well, but I cut it out. So in like my other podcasts, I sound very smart. On a video podcast, you can't edit it out. It'll look weird, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Justine, this is your first time doing any Podcavern related stuff. So the people at home don't have any idea who you are. You are an unknown. Can you just
Oh,
introduce
thanks,
yourself
Tongue.
for me? Yes.
My
Go
name is
ahead.
Justine. Growing up, I always said just it's like Justin, but with an E because a lot of people couldn't pronounce my name. I guess it's because of the neighborhood I grew up in.
Mhm.
That's whatever. I work with Tongue at an undisclosed location, which is how we
Very
know each other.
secret. It's not that secret, but
What
let's
else
just not
about
say it in
me?
case they
Yeah,
listen
yeah.
to this.
Fun fact, Tongue has a podcast with our work too. He does
Mhm.
a podcast for where we work, and it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I'll just say
I
that.
do professional podcasting too, everyone, just so you know. I get paid to podcast now. It's insane. But we won't talk about that one.
Yeah,
This is
no,
the
because it's a
podcast that
very,
matters more than that
yeah,
one.
that one's a very boring topic, in my opinion, which I won't even discuss what the topic is about. Okay, let's move on. What
Yeah.
else? Um, I'm Vietnamese. I don't know if
Hmm.
that probably has an impact on this podcast. It's good to mention.
I think
Vietnamese
so.
Canadian, first generation.
I'm sure we'll
Um,
talk a lot about that when
yeah,
we start talking about the movie, which we're not saying what it is, but as soon as you click on the episode, you have all the ideas of what we're talking about later.
exactly.
Yeah.
What else?
Well, Justine, let me ask you this. Like, what are you doing in your spare time to make you positive during the pandemic? What keeps you up and being like, you know what? I want to wake up and tackle the day.
So aside from work and making money, been doing a lot of baking. So I got really into baking, I guess last year or like a year and a half ago when the pandemic really started. So I was a student for a while, interning at the same time, which is where me and Tongue work. And obviously that came to an end because I had to go back to school. So it was online school, so it was mostly baking, just like either every day or every weekend, specifically French pastries. I love laminating dough. I love anything that has to do with butter. So, yeah, that's kind of been it. Other than that, I spent most of my summer in New York, which was pretty fun. Brooklyn, Manhattan specifically, that kind of area. That's it. When I think
That
about
sounds
myself,
like
it's
a
like
lot.
baking plus New York. Yeah.
That sounds like a lot to me. It's like, oh, my life is so boring. I just bake all these like interesting French bakery thingies. And I went to, I don't know, a little place called New York. But Justine, like you discovered baking during the pandemic, or was it something you always wanted to do? And then the pandemic was something that kind of unlocked it all for you?
I've always been like a fan of baking, kind of started like in university, but it was more so when I came home for the winter break or the summer break that I would do a little bit. It started with like creme brulee, like that was kind of like my foot in the door.
Whoa, is creme brulee basic? Is that like the foot in the door thing?
Um, in my opinion, yes.
What? Isn't creme brulee the thing that you have to like wait, am I
Torch, like the torching part is very easy because you're just
yes,
putting sugar on the custard and then you torch it
but
with
you
a
have to crack it
blowtorch.
afterwards, right?
Yeah, that it's like pretty easy once you do it like
Oh
three
wow.
times.
Okay.
And then the pandemic like really like catapulted me going like deep into French pastries, doing like
Okay.
croissants, or if you're French, a croissant, um, chocolatine or pain au chocolat, like just so many more viennoiseries, I think they're called. So it's
Mhm.
like more laminated dough with yeast and so on. So like lots of
You're
butters.
self-taught like YouTube and Google and all that other
Yes,
stuff.
YouTube, Claire Sappitz, love her, great baker. Yeah, YouTube baking forums, baking blogs.
You bake a lot. I've seen your Instagram and it always looks very tasty. I'm always like, wow, Justine made a lot today. And she's making even more tomorrow. And I'm like, who's able to eat this all? Because, you know, it's baked goods. Like you have a
Yeah.
window where it's good and then it's not. Do you just give it away?
It's just mostly my family that's going to be eating it. So I haven't capitalized on it. Like I'm not selling it.
Uh-huh.
So
Yet.
just like friends and family. And if
Right.
it's like really shitty, my family will still eat it, which is nice because like baking is very wasteful at times. So
Mm. And it takes a long time, it seems like.
yeah. So with croissants specifically, I do it over the span of 3 days. And then you have
Oh my
technically one day
God.
to eat it before it goes stale.
What? And oh my God, that's insane. But you've experiment, you're beyond just regular croissants. Aren't you like the are you doing chocolate croissants or like
Yeah.
powdered croissants and whatever?
Yeah, so there's like almond croissants, there's chocolate croissants or pain au chocolat, depending on where you're from. There's also other like very delicious like laminated dough type pastries. So there's oh God, I can't even think of it now. But there's more than just croissants. It's like a variation of a croissant, and it's
Okay.
just even more delicious. It's an auditory experience. I wish I brought one on for this podcast so we
So
can
you
do
can
some like
eat it in
eating
front of everyone.
ASMR or something.
They're
Maybe
like,
next time.
this one's a chocolate croissant, chomp,
Yes.
chomp, chomp, and this one's an almond one, a chompity chomp, a
Yes, yes,
chomp.
exactly.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm still not over the fact that you're like, yeah, creme brulee. It's the basic bitch of all bakery. It's not like cookies, Pillsbury Doughboy type stuff. No, that's even below that. To the creme brulee, beginner stuff. I don't even know how to make a creme brulee. Laura has done it a few times, but as soon
Yeah,
as you whip out the torch, I'm like, it already seems too fancy for me.
the torch is the easy part. That's the thing, because that's like you're at the end, and then you get to eat it like 5 minutes after. So I know
Okay.
Laura makes a lot of pies, right? Like
She
pies are very
does.
fun too.
Yeah. And she experiments with, well, she used to, like, she used to make like a pizza pie, for example. She's like, I don't know, let's put all the pizza ingredients in like a pie crust and see what happens.
She's
Uh,
like Laura, not Laura. She's like Jenna from Waitress, one of my favorite musicals ever.
oh, you two should talk. She loves that
Yeah,
musical. She has the waitress. This is a tangent, and everybody is like doesn't care about this baking or musical here. But Laura has in this musical, they bake a lot of pies. That's what the main character does. And my sister gifted Laura for Christmas this baking pie recipe book from Waitress. So it's like all of
really.
the famous pies and like stuff invented for this book. And she's made like a bunch of them and they're so good. Maybe I'll send you a couple screenshots, Justine.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a book about it. I've
Oh,
seen like blog posts, like people making their own type of pies based on the movie and the musical. I did not know there was a book. Maybe
there's
I'll
a book for everything.
steal
There's
that
a
from
book for
Laura.
like
That's
Breath of
true.
the Wild recipes and stuff
Yeah,
like that,
yeah.
you know? Anyways, well, that's great, Justine. But shall we get into the news of the week? Now, with the news of the week, I really want to shorten the amount of time that we talk about this because our movie of the week, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, feels like an event. It is for me. I think it
I
is for
think so.
Justine
Yeah.
as well. And arguably, the rest of the world feels it as well. And I hope they do. But, anyways, let's tease it out a little bit by talking about, let's talk about The Matrix for a second. Justine, the Matrix Resurrection trailer dropped this week. Do you care about The Matrix at all?
I actually haven't seen the trailer. I've seen
Okay.
snippets of it. I've definitely watched The Matrix probably a long time ago. It's on my rewatch list because I watched it when I was really young. To answer your question, do I care about it? Probably not as much as like the movie we're going to talk about, but I'll probably see it just because
Yeah,
it's
well, I
such
think
like
that's
a big
unfair.
impact on, I don't know, The Matrix is huge. Like the
I mean, like,
costumes,
that's true. That's true.
the question they'll ask, the blue or the red pill. Like that's such a, it's kind of like Mean Girls. Like everyone knows about it. You don't even have to watch it to know like red pill, blue pill comes from The Matrix, and it's Keanu Reeves. So
I'm a little disappointed, and this maybe is a spoiler for people. They didn't introduce a third pill in the trailer. Just like, here's the orange pill.
which is like Xanax or something,
Just like MDMA.
or like placebo. All you psychology nerds out there. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, The Matrix. Did you watch all three of them and the Animatrix? Like any of that stuff,
No,
or just the first one?
I've seen the first one.
Mhm.
That's kind of about it. I'll probably go through them and watch each, like all
Don't,
three. Oh, no,
don't.
I don't need to. Just the first one then.
People will say different stuff. I truly believe the first Matrix is one of those pivotal movies in
Hmm.
film history, and I'm not exaggerating. Like, the Matrix is, or what still is, used in philosophy classes to this day because it poses very interesting questions.
Hmm.
For its time, it had some very interesting sci-fi ideas and lots of really cool action and stuff like that, which you can
Hmm.
see like it inspired other movies that came after it to kind of ape and copy all that stuff. But the second and third Matrix, I don't think says anything interesting about the world. It just
Okay.
tries to be kind of like cool. And I don't think it really lands on any of that because, like, the Matrix is cool,
Hmm.
but the reason why it's interesting is because it tells you something or makes you want to think about the world you live in right now. And
Hmm.
mostly like, oh, am I living in the Matrix right
Are we
now?
in a simulation?
The
I
answer is
don't.
no, because have you been able to download karate to your brain yet, like Keanu Reeves? I haven't found a way to do that yet. So, yeah. Do you think we're living in the Matrix, Justine?
Um, I don't think so.
Okay.
I
It's
don't
on
want to
record
get
now.
into it because I don't know if I can articulate my thoughts for that.
Uh huh.
It's
That's
too much. It's a complicated topic.
it's
Same with
so much.
time travel. The longer you think about it, you're just like, my brain's gonna explode.
Yeah, my brain's gonna explode. I'm going to pass on this conversation. I
Yeah,
don't want to do it anymore.
I don't want to have an existential crisis.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a cool movie though. I'll admit that. And
it is a
Keanu
cool
Reeves
movie.
looks amazing in it. He looks very hot.
Okay, all right. Well, Justine, as I know, as your friend, you judge a movie based on how hot the main
Yes,
character
it's
is.
more so for like male leads specifically. I have like kind of two criterias, or is it criterion or criteria? Whatever.
Yeah.
Two kind of prerequisites if I'll enjoy a movie. One, are they hot? Two, have I seen them in anything before? So like, actually, no, I won't spoil it because we haven't talked about the movie yet. I'll use a different example. Richard Madden
Okay,
meets criteria one,
because he's
hot.
hot. Okay.
Yeah. Have I seen him in something before? Yes, and I enjoyed it. So there's The Bodyguard. I like that
Okay.
show.
I was gonna
And then
say,
Cinderella.
wow, you're naming the two things after his most
Yes,
famous role.
yes, I know. I haven't. Yeah, a lot of people are probably gonna be like, "What?" But no, I have not
No,
seen Game of Thrones.
that's
I
okay.
know I've seen the last season because like my friends were watching it.
You watched the last season before
Because my
watching.
friends were just my roommates were watching it, and like I'm gonna chill with them in the living room, and if they're watching it, might as well. And I didn't see him in the finale, so I just know he doesn't make it to the end, so I don't want to get attached to him, and then
Yeah.
he like dies in the most horrific way ever.
spoilers for those of you who haven't watched what, like 6, 7 years ago when Richard Madden was on Game of Thrones. Yes, he is not in the finale. Let's just say
Yeah.
that he's not in the final season.
And I like know one of the most significant episodes is where he dies. And I did not know that for a very long time until
Mhm,
someone was like, oh, you have to at least watch Red Wedding. And
mhm.
then, yeah, the topic came up. And I was like, oh, that's when Richard Madden dies. Great. I don't need to
That
watch
doesn't
it.
interest you. It depends. Like that's when he's at his least hot, you might say, because
Oh,
he's
okay.
dead, right? Like
Yeah.
you're interested when he's like charismatic and just
Yeah.
like
In Cinderella.
smoldering looks to the camera and stuff
Hmm.
like that. Okay, all right. So I forget how we got on this topic, but Richard Madden is hot. Is kind of where we're
Yes.
at.
It started from Keanu Reeves in The Matrix.
Oh, I
That's what I was like,
see.
he looks so good and like so handsome in it. And I mean, he's still very handsome, but like, especially in The Matrix because he was younger. But
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. I
hot.
think
And if I like something there and before, I'll watch the movie.
fair enough. I think he still looks hot now. You know, we are in the age where Keanu Reeves is on a comeback, or he already has
Yes.
been on a comeback. Brendan Fraser is starting to become on a comeback where there's a renaissance going on. He hasn't even released a movie yet, and people are like, yes, love Brendan Fraser. And I'm all for it because these older actors, they need some love because like
Yeah.
who cares, Justine, about Timothy Chalamet? Do you care about this like unknown actor?
I love Timothy.
I
You know
know,
I love
I know.
Timothy
I
Chalamet.
I set you up for that. You love him too.
Yeah.
That's the reason why you're gonna watch Dune, right?
That is literally the only reason why I'm watching Dune is because he's in it. And I know it's gonna be good because he's in it.
That's so funny to me because it's so weird to me to be like, okay, Justine's watching Dune, a very like hoity-toity science fiction type of
Yeah.
story, which everybody's pumped about. I'm kind of too, but it's like complicated science fiction.
Hmm.
Like they don't pull their punches when it comes to like layering a world and introducing concepts that are like, what are you talking about? And everybody's super excited about it, and you're excited about it strictly because Timothy Chalamet's in
Yeah.
it.
And he's like the main character. He's Paul. So of course I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah. Okay. Fair, fair. Well, our movie today does not have Timothy Chalamet. Maybe arguably someone better than that, but we'll get to it. I'm
That's
trying to
another
gauge.
debate. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
that's a
know. Oh, I'll let you introduce
okay.
the
All right,
movie.
we won't get there yet. I'll just say two more news stories here. One of them is, do you remember the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith with
Yes.
yes,
Hmm.
with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie? Do you know they
Hmm.
were doing, and they still are, an Amazon Prime series with Phoebe Waller-Bridge and Donald Glover as Mr. and Mrs. Smith?
I don't know who the
First
female
person
lead
is.
is.
Did you ever watch Fleabag before?
No.
No, that's your type of. I think that you'd like that show.
Okay.
Okay, you know what? It doesn't matter because she left the series. She's a really big deal. She's won a ton of awards because of Fleabag.
I'll
Donald
probably like
Glover,
know her face if I
you
like
know
looked
her
her up.
face.
Yeah.
I guess the simpler question is, did you want a Mr. and Mrs. Smith series?
No. I don't
Okay.
think I ever like I probably did watch that movie maybe a few years ago. And I was
Okay.
like,
It's an
yeah,
old movie at
yeah,
this point.
this is cool. Like, I mean, Brad Pitt, hot, Angelina Jolie, hot, like,
Hmm.
and it's kind of the movie that started, I think, their relationship. That's
I think you're right. Yeah, I think it was
yeah,
the
and
point where they asked each other out when they both put guns at each other, fake
yeah,
prop guns at each other's head, and they're like, "I think I have a real life crush on you."
I like the fight scene. I remember that being like a pretty fun scene to watch. But no, I did not care for a
Okay.
TV series or even like a second movie. I don't even think it like
Yeah.
warranted that. So
Okay.
no.
Well, it's happening. So
Okay, that's
that's
awesome.
the news story for you here. Two more news stories for you here. Actually, I'll just gloss over this one, not because I don't want to respect it, but it is a downer. I'm not sure if you ever watched The Wire or Boardwalk Empire or Lovecraft Country. Michael K. Williams, a very gifted actor, a black actor who was 54 years old. You don't. This doesn't ring any bells to you, eh?
I think it does ring a bell. I can see his face in my mind. I just don't recall what or remembering any of the movies he's been in, but
Mostly a
I'm sure I've
TV
seen at
actor.
least. Okay.
Yeah.
I definitely know the face. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's
He
pretty
lost
unfortunate.
his life to he had a lot of drug addiction and things like that, and unfortunately he did pass away. I'm only bringing it up because I feel like it's necessary to bring up that this actor is just one of the most gifted actors of our time. I truly think so. So if you've never seen anything he's been in, please watch. I don't know, he's been in The Night of, he was in, like I said, The Wire. That's probably his most famous role. He was in like a couple episodes of Community, that kind of stuff. Definitely check it out. It's very sad that he has left us, but I think it has a lot to say about like drug addiction and
Hmm.
Hollywood and stuff like that. People think that the most famous of us, the people who make the most money, are just set for the rest of their lives and they don't go through everyday struggles like,
Hmm.
us and stuff like that. So I think it's important to like bring attention to like this can happen to anybody, we don't know what people are
Yeah.
going through. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I don't want to end on a downer, so I'll go on an up, which is let's talk about Blue's Clues.
Oh my God, I had no idea you were going to talk about this. Oh
Uh-huh.
man.
All right.
25th
Justine.
anniversary of Blue's Clues.
Yep. Tell me, how
And
did you feel? Everybody's seen it at this point. Probably it's had, I think at this point, it must have like 2 million likes on Twitter, like quote tweets, like hundreds of thousands, maybe in the million. I don't even know. Eh, What did you think of this Blues Clues thing?
I did not know I needed Steve's validation until that video came out. Like, totally forgot about Blue's Clues, but I have seen like interviews of him talking about what he kind of did after, like that role, but I didn't know that I needed um those, I guess, affirmations from him, or like
Oh,
it was just like the fuzziest thing to watch, and like I think everyone felt it, especially because we're in such like a
dark
shitty,
times and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
shitty place right now. So I think a lot of people needed it more than they knew.
If you don't know what we're talking about, this viral video came out from the Nick Jr. of all places
Yeah.
Twitter account, where the first host of Blue's Clues, the children's TV show, where it's a cartoon and you have a real life human. And anytime Blue puts his paw print on the screen, it's a clue. And the people at home are like, oh, it's a clue. And it's just like one of those, like, it's like Dora the Explorer kind of like feeling where you're
Yes.
solving TV problems, but not really kind of thing. Anyways, the host, Steve, left Blue's Clues to go to college. This was years and years and years ago. I remember this because I was still a kid and I used to watch the show as a with my cousins. I was a little old for the show, but I still loved it because it was still like really wholesome. And then you got like another person, his brother or something coming in, and you're like,
Hmm.
who's this guy? Where's Steve at? And then another person eventually took over and stuff. And you get older and then you stop caring. So I'm with Justine where I'm like, I found closure, I guess, in my own way because I forgot about Blue's Clues. I knew it was still going on
Hmm.
and I was happy for the people watching the show, but it was just like, yeah, Blue's Clues is a show I used to watch. But then they released this video, this 3-minute video of Steve coming on, and he's just like, hey, let's talk about that time I went to college and I never
Yeah.
said anything. I've never touched base with you guys since. And he says the most heartwarming, wholesome shit to you. And I was like legit like tearing up because I'm like, holy crap, this is not what I was expecting on like a
Yeah.
Monday night or whatever it was.
It was like the most randomest thing, but I think everyone needed it. And it was like just so heartwarming. And I don't know if you know, but the third person that replaced his brother, he's like Filipino. And
Yeah.
they incorporate a lot of Filipino culture into the show. Like he has his Lola, his, I think that means grandma or
Okay.
maybe aunt. But she comes into the show and he talks about being Filipino to the audience. So it's like a big deal that they did a reunion for their 25th. So I thought
I,
that
I
was
have to
awesome.
say there it was a big week for just things coming out. I think like Sony, for example, had this big like showcase. So they were like Twitter was on fire, social media was on fire. I would argue Blues Clues, the Twitter account and social media this week just was leagues above everything else this week for whatever reason. If you went to their Twitter account, they had not just this wholesome video, you should check it out. Even if you did not watch Blue's Clues. I've heard from many people that it still warmed their heart to hear these things.
Mhm.
So definitely worth watching. But the Nick Jr. Twitter account was like all three hosts watching clips of each other.
Yeah, it was
And it
so
was
cute.
they're doing like so much random promo being like, hey, the only reason Blue's still around is because of you. And
And
you're
then
like,
they do like montages of like little kids drawing Blue's Clues. Some kids even has like the famous red couch that Steve sits
oh,
on,
the
like the
thinking chair.
notepad. Yes, like
Oh,
everything.
it's great. It's great. It honestly, it's probably the best thing that came out up until this movie. So let's talk about it. Justine, we've been teasing it a lot, but I want you to introduce the full title of this movie. Go ahead.
Oh my God. Can you do it? I don't even know if I know the full title. I've just
Try,
been
just
referred
try, just try.
Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings and the
And
Legend of the Ten Rings.
You are a product of all who came before you. The legacy of your family. You are your mother. And whether you like it or not, you are also your father.
I told my men they wouldn't be able to kill you if they tried. Glad I was right.
yes, you nailed it.
Starring Simu Liu, you have Michelle Yeoh, you have Aquafina, you have Fala Chen, you have Tony Leung. There's Ronnie Chang, he's one of my favorites. Amazing.
Is Munger Jang,
Yeah.
who is the newest. We'll talk about her in a second. There's so much to talk about this movie. And I will say right off the top, like, and there's a reason why Justine's here today. I really wanted to make sure I got an Asian person for today's episode of Talking Tongue. It would feel really weird to talk about this, the significance of this movie to any other person, I think. But how about we start with something very simple, which is, did you like the movie?
Yes, I loved the movie. I wish I had time to rewatch it in HD like a second time, but I found a very shitty stream just to like quickly rewatch it. I loved it. I'll rewatch it again. It's probably going to be one of those movies where either it's going to be background noise movie where I just put it on, watch it while I'm working, or just it's so good. I loved every moment of it. It was
incredible.
Really nice.
And we will talk about spoilers in a little bit, but I also want to talk about, Justine, like with this movie as an Asian person, did you feel anything from watching this movie? Like, of course, I know you like Marvel movies. I'm not sure if you've seen them all, but I know we've talked about a lot of them. But in the context of like a superhero Asian led movie, how did this make you feel?
To me, it's like good that there's I'm feeling represented on the screen. I'm not Chinese, I don't speak Mandarin, I'm Vietnamese, but still to have people that look like you on the screen, it feels like a long time coming. A little bit on a tangent, like same thing for Crazy Rich Asians. When that came out, it was such a big deal because it was kind of the first Hollywood movie with an all Asian cast.
Yeah.
And obviously, like the title is Crazy Rich Asians. You're like a small percentage of Asian people might actually relate to these families, but still, it's a big deal to see a full Asian cast on your TV screen.
Yeah. And we've been getting it. I would say Crazy Rich Asians, and of course there's been movies before that, but Crazy Rich Asians to me, which was only a few years ago, was kind of the reawakening of Asian culture in Hollywood, I guess, where they cast Asian people. They have writers that are Asian, directors who are Asian, who are leading the charge and being like, hey, we also have a place on the Hollywood table in America, North America, that kind of stuff. And I think ever since Crazy Rich Asians, we've had like a couple little things along the way. Like I know Randall Park and I forget her name.
Ali Wong.
They did a thing together, right? And it was good. I remember watching that movie and being like, that was good. But we've been getting a lot of kind of the same type of At this point, it's not cliche yet, but it's starting to become where a lot of the cliche of an Asian American movie kind of thing is where the main character is struggling with their like identity, where they grew up in Asia, like America, they're Asian, they're maybe first generation Asian or Chinese or Vietnamese or whatever, and they're struggling with their like grandparents who are like from China or whatever like that. This movie doesn't go there. Like this movie goes and subverts, I think, a lot of expectations in the sense that like, say there's a lot of martial arts in this movie. And I think a big cliche when it comes to martial arts movies is that you have all of these badass people doing crazy kung fu and karate and all this other stuff. And you have them all training a white man or something like that to be, you are the chosen one. Our culture was because of you. We needed you to lead us to like whatever and beat the bad guy. And there's none of that in this movie. Thank God. Okay. So with the spoilers that we're going to be talking about, I think I'm going to be jumping back and forth because I've seen this movie twice now in a span of a week. I was very excited for when it came out. I saw it on opening day, and then I saw it like 5 days later by myself. And I was just ecstatic to be watching it again. And I would say on the second watch through, I was even more pumped about it. I loved it the first time around, but the second time I was like, you know what? Maybe it's because all of the significance of being Asian and stuff like that. I really identify closely with this, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But I was feeling really emotional being like, oh, I see myself on the big screen. I see my people on the big screen, all this other stuff. Maybe I love this movie because of just that. So the second time watch through, I'm going to watch this movie with a more critical movie film eye, look for like the mistakes in the CG and like just be like kind of like pretentious about that kind of stuff. But within the first 15 minutes, I'm like, nope, can't do it. I'm in love again. Like I love this film. It's so good. Justine, can you tell me your favorite moments of this movie?
Ooh, okay. So I'll start with the opening scene. I actually really loved that they spoke Mandarin. And they speak Mandarin for a lot of parts in the film. They'll switch back to their mother tongue really seamlessly. So I was like, okay, this is legit. They're being really respectful and mindful of the culture. They're going to make it an authentic story. So that's one of my favorite parts. Second part, or probably one of my favorite scenes, is when Tony Leung and Fala Chen meet each other and they're like falling in love, but they're like kind of fighting at the same time. But it's really more so like a dance, and they catch each other's eyes.
Term for this thing in movies, which is called flirt fighting, which is like you're fighting, but it's kind of really sexy and there's lots of sexual tension.
Yeah, it's on. Like they want to fuck.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure.
And I loved that part. And like watching it a second time, even though it was really shitty quality, you can just see it in his eyes. Like he has fallen in love with this woman. And same for her when she like takes off the hat and the mask. He was just so smitten, and it just made my heart melt.
Did you watch a lot of like Asian, like Chinese, Vietnamese movies growing up, or like in the background? Did your parents ever watch that type of stuff?
Growing up, no. My parents watched I forgot what it's called. You probably know. You probably know what it's called, but it's like
Paris by Night?
Yes, Paris by Night. They watched a lot of that, but
I don't know how I knew that, but I can already tell like by your facial reaction. Paris by Night, for people who don't know, is like, I don't know, like a Vietnamese like
Broadway kind of spectacular. A bunch of Vietnamese famous singers come together, and it's just like
it's like an awards show without the awards. It's just performances all night, right?
Yeah. Okay. And it's huge. So my parents watched that, but I did watch Shang-Chi with my boyfriend, and he said that it was just so reminiscent of like the Kung Fu movies he watched growing up. Yeah. Obviously because Tony Leung's in it too. So I think it just added to that.
Tony Leung, I have to talk about him later because, and we'll go through every single cast member mostly, because there is something to be said about their performances in this movie. I feel like with this movie, like there's a lot of Marvel movies where they insert a bunch of side characters, which are fun. And I love Marvel movies. Like I really do. I've been going through this like Avengers Black Widow kind of run right now, ever since I watched Shang-Chi. But with the side characters in a lot of these movies, they're like here for comedic relief. They're here
Mhm.
because they're just a side off, whatever kind of character. I felt like pretty much every single character in this movie had a significance to the actual story itself.
Mhm. I
And
agree.
like, if you have characters like Aquafina, for example, her character Katie, which is in other movies would just be like your comedic relief side character. They don't have any real like they don't matter to the story. I would
Mhm.
disagree with Katie. Like her character has a full arc in the movie and it's
Mhm. Mhm.
incredible, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's, I think with her character, like nothing's a fluke. Like, yeah, she's driving this big bus, but it's also because she's like really good at driving cars to begin with. So it wasn't like by chance that, oh, she can just drive this bus. Like they kind of led up to it with her driving that BMW, which
I
seems to
guess
be like a big sponsor in this movie.
yeah. I guess since we're already talking about Katie, with her character itself, like yeah, like she struggles with a thing that I think a lot of maybe first generation Asians have, or like maybe I'll go even beyond that, like people in general,
Yeah,
the
I
people
think
who
so.
don't know what they want to do in life.
Hmm.
So they settle. And there's a really great line in Mandarin or Chinese later uh, that someone says, hey, if you aim at nothing, you get nothing kind of thing.
Yes.
And I was like, damn, that is a really good
Yeah.
line. Like, of course. Yeah. And then she picks up archery, which is really on the nose, I guess.
Hmm.
And yeah, I just feel like as the movie progresses as a side character, she gets such a satisfying thing where, like, of
Hmm.
course, I care what happens to Shang-Chi and Simu Liu, but I also care about Aquafina and her arc. And
Hmm.
speaking of Aquafina, I just have to say, like, for myself, I find Aquafina is a very talented actress and singer, rapper, but I find in a lot of movies that I've seen her in, she can be a lot, almost overbearing, like personality wise. Like she's fun, but she could sometimes feel like she's mugging the performances compared to other people. But in this movie, I felt like her comedic timing, the heart that she brought, the empathy that she brought to this character was like the perfect balance for this movie.
I loved her in this. I've only seen her in Crazy Rich Asians, so I don't know much about how she performs or like who am I to judge like performances anyways. But I everyone was amazing in this movie. Yeah, I loved her character and I'm very excited to see like what they're gonna do with her
Oh yeah.
in future movies. Also, I know like are they gonna make them love interests? That's kind of
I
a
don't know.
daily as well.
So this is interesting. So for, I mean, you people must know, but Shang-Chi is obviously from Marvel Comics. Now, I went ahead and I'm a big Marvel comic kind of guy in the way that I've read a lot of stuff. But Shang-Chi himself, like I've only seen him in very minor roles in comics. I never read a full thing up until recently, where he's been in like he's part of the Avengers, for example. He's the master of Kung Fu, no superpowers, but he's just really, really good at Kung Fu.
Hmm.
And he's been in like something called Agents of Atlantis, which is kind of like an all Asian hero superhero team up kind of gang. And I just recently read Shang-Chi. I think it's called Shang-Chi Reborn. I don't actually know if that's true, but it's from 2020. It's the run of just Shang-Chi kind of fighting it out with his brothers and sisters, which they don't do in
Okay.
this movie. So, like, the thing is, Shang-Chi in the comics, one of the most recent ones from like just a year ago, a big part of his personality is that he has siblings. Like,
But in
a
this movie,
lot.
he only has one.
Yeah, like yeah, exactly. Like he has like someone called Sister Hammer, Brother Saber, like, and it's like really different.
Okay.
And I know the director of this movie. I forget his name right now. I'll remember it later. It's
David? Oh, I thought it
Destin
was
Daniel
David.
Cretton. I think
Okay.
that's what it is. And I know him and Simu wanted to approach this movie differently. They're like, hey, look, Shang-Chi is cool in the comics, and he is, but there's something really old school about him where he speaks a lot in like ancient Chinese proverbs, for
Okay.
example. You know what I mean? Like in old martial arts movies where like you're trying to talk to them and they're like, and the bonsai tree
Yeah.
falls from the petal falls into the river and the river ripples and you must fight like the ripple. And it's like, what are you talking? They don't do that in this movie.
No.
And
It's very modern.
very modern. And that was the whole like kind of vision for this movie. So let's bring
Okay.
Shang-Chi into the modern age. He doesn't need his like questionable brothers and sisters who were like, yeah, like Brother Hand. That's what his name is in the movie, in the comics. Shang-Chi's Brother Hand. And it's like, okay, like who cares? It's let's do away with all of that and put this character in the 21st century, make him fit and like make him not have to talk in Chinese proverbs. Let's make him talk like a regular Asian American type of person. Let's make him relatable. Let's make him still really good at Kung Fu, that type of stuff, you know? And me explaining that to you, how does that make you feel, like the differences between like the comics and the movie itself?
I don't read Marvel comics, so I know like zero about like any Marvel superhero. So I'm glad they kind of went with that approach. It makes sense because all the other Marvel movies are very modern. So why would they make this? I don't know. I guess like they didn't want it to be stereotypical kind of Chinese kung fu fighting movie where I don't know, I think they made like a conscious effort to make it relatable to Asian Americans and also enjoyable to people who aren't necessarily Asian or just a general Marvel fan to begin with. So
Yeah.
I think it fits in with what they have done so far.
Agreed. Well, while we're talking about all that, let's go back to the cast for a second. And I'm going to just name the cast for you and you can just gush if you want, because I know you have a lot to say. I'll end on the main character because I know you have a lot to say about his abs, and I do too.
They're amazing.
I want to talk about Michelle Yeoh. She is fantastic. She was also in Crazy Rich Asians. I saw a clip afterwards that she like did a lot of martial arts movies growing up, and it's like we haven't even got to this yet. The choreography of this movie, like the fight choreography, is just magnetic. It is so interesting to watch and fun and like exhilarating. And I don't think we've had like a kung fu movie on the big screen in what feels like forever, you know, like
I wouldn't be able to name like any recent one. I guess Karate Kid with
no,
Jaden
that's not even doesn't count, because
karate.
like that I don't even think that counts. Like I would say like maybe the older Jackie Chan movies, for example, and like, you know, Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee is all we got as like, you know,
and
Asian,
Jet Li. I like remember Jet Li. Yeah,
those are the three actors that people think about when they think of like Asian actors, fighting actors who made it in Hollywood, right? That's all we got. And we haven't seen anything since those guys that like, at least on the big screen, you know, I'm sure we've seen stuff on the silver screen, like on TV and stuff, but in movies, we haven't seen this type of fight choreography since that, where it's like long shots of people fighting and you see it. And it's not like cutting back and forth. There's a movie recently called Mortal Kombat, which is all about people.
Haven't watched it.
That's fine. One of the things that I think I was most excited about Mortal Kombat was I got to see some fighting, and we didn't really. Like in Shang-Chi, they stick with the actors. They are showing like long takes of them like actually doing kung fu with each other. Mortal Kombat, it's like punch, cut, kick, punch.
Oh,
you know? It's like, it's really disorienting.
And I guess like Mortal Kombat is known for its fight scenes and like super gory violence, and I'm guessing
Justine,
people
it's called
didn't
Mortal
get that.
Kombat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say for something like Mulan, for example, which is another thing recently, which was what I was excited about. Did you watch it?
I watched like 10 minutes of it and I couldn't get into it. It was a little on the cringy side.
So that's a movie which I did end up liking with a lot of caveats. Like there's a lot of political stuff that I won't talk about. We talked about another Talking Tongue episode. The thing that interested to me was that they try to tap into Asian culture as well as Asian fighting and martial arts, like in Shang-Chi or like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, that type of stuff where they like flying in the air, you know, in the beginning of Shang-Chi where like Fa La Chen and Tony are like, they're flying in the air and just doing like sexy flirt fighting.
Very flowy, very combative, but very flirty at the same time.
And Mulan was kind of like that, but
Okay.
here's a spoiler to Mulan was that they introduced this concept of basically their version of the Force, like Star Wars the Force,
Oh, okay,
where they're
okay.
like super powered and stuff like that. And it's like, well, that's not really what I wanted on the screen
Yeah.
either. And Shang-Chi ended up doing it perfectly, like a balance. Of course, there's floaty stuff, but it's mostly just hand-to-hand combat. And
Mhm.
I know I was just talking about Michelle Yeoh, and I promise I'll get back to her. But what did you feel about like the choreography in this movie?
I loved it. I don't watch a lot of kung fu movies, so I don't have a lot of expectations, or I didn't have a lot of expectations going into it, but it felt like I was watching a dance almost for some of the scenes. But I really liked it. I liked how they used kind of like natural elements of the leaves going in, and everything looks so lush during part of like, I guess like Fala Chan's and Tony Leung's scene, but I really liked it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't have like a better kind of
No, well,
opinion on it,
here,
but
let me
I really just
preface it
enjoyed
like
watching
this.
it.
Like you've seen a lot of Marvel movies, right? Like to me, when I watch this film,
Hmm.
it is like I've always liked the action scenes in Marvel movies. I'm a
Hmm.
sucker like that. I just watched Black Widow yesterday, which I really, really enjoyed in terms of their action. But after watching Shang-Chi, I'm spoiled because like just if you compare the two side by side, it's not even close to what
Yeah.
has more impressive fight choreography in it.
Yeah, I feel like with the other Marvel movies, it's very, I guess, in your face kind of action, explosions, a lot of banter back and forth between, the villains and the heroes. You don't really get a lot of that in Shang-Chi, which I enjoyed
Mhm.
because it just wasn't as, I don't know if punchy is the right word, but it was just more calming to watch a fight scene where you can just really focus on the combat between the two characters versus like explosions in the back, Thanos doing this. I don't know, like
Yeah. No
just
Thanos in this movie.
no,
Spoilers,
no
I
Thanos
guess.
in this movie.
But this will bring me back to Michelle Yeoh because, like, Michelle Yeoh, that's how you say her name. She has a scene in the movie where she comes in and she's a big presence and she's kind of like already a master of martial arts,
Mhm.
teaching Shang-Chi how to fight. And you see them doing like a dance next to each other and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And you see Michelle actually doing the choreography to
Mhm.
this fight. And it's just really mesmerizing in that way,
Yeah.
I
I
guess, you
think that's a
know?
good way to put it. Like these fights are very mesmerizing to watch versus like the other Marvel movies. It's just like, holy shit, I really hope he kicks his ass.
Yeah. Well, you know what it is? I think in a lot of like martial arts movies, they have, and this is really hard to explain. And if you don't understand me, I totally get it. But like whenever they throw a punch, it sounds like their sleeves are coming up as well. So they do like a,
Oh yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know what I
I
mean?
never even realized that,
And I
but I know
love
exactly
that.
what
I
you're
love
talking
that in
about.
kung fu movies. And they do that a lot in here, where it's just like, whereas in like the other, I don't know, Marvel movies or action movies, it's always like, bam, like boom, bam, boom, boom, boom,
Yeah,
boom,
yeah.
boom, really small detail, but I love that. Okay. So Michelle Yeoh, love her. She's amazing. Fala Chen, I have to give her a big shout out. Again, a minor character in the grand scheme of things. She's the mother character of Shang-Chi, but I found she was so great to watch.
Hmm.
She beautiful actress, by the way. She's
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
so like pretty and like she has that maternal love to her. And she speaks mostly in Chinese the entire time, I
Hmm.
think, right?
Hmm.
And yeah, what did you think about her?
I loved watching her, obviously. I think beyond like this is obviously a superhero movie, but I think it's also a movie about like family, about brothers and sisters and mothers and sons, the relationship that mothers and sons can have. Yeah, I loved her character. I'm obviously sad she died, spoiler, but
Oh, we're
it's
talking about
obviously
spoilers. Yeah.
very necessary for Shang-Chi's character. I any scene with her and Tony Leung, it felt like comfort to me when they do the flashbacks of him talking about her and how he fell in love with her and he was willing to give up anything for her. I just love those scenes. Like it made my heart just like melt. So anything with
Yeah.
her and him, loved it. And then you go back to him being like a very traumatized like
Yeah. We'll talk
person.
about
You
it.
bring it back.
Tony Long, I'm kind of saving for later because he's like a whole conversation on its own. Because to me, he's like the most interesting part of this movie, even though I think everybody's really good. But with Fala Chen, like what I love about her scenes in a lot of these scenes, you mentioned this at the beginning, where they speak Mandarin, when they speak Chinese, and they're unapologetic about it. They just do it because that's who they are.
Yeah.
And I love that about a big screen Marvel movie where they don't have to, they do speak English in this movie.
Yeah, where it makes sense.
And that's fine because everyone's like bilingual, trilingual. Like Shang-Chi was said he could speak 4 different languages, and that's fine.
And I found that, sorry to cut
go
you
ahead,
off,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I found that they spoke Mandarin when it was kind of just the brother and sister, but when Katie, Aquafina's character, was there, they obviously speak English because her Mandarin just isn't as good. So I think that's why it just makes sense when they kind of switch back between either English or Mandarin.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's so important in this type of movie to cater not only to like the mainstream audience, but they don't go all the way with it in the way that they don't care as well. They're like, no, this is an Asian movie. Of course they're going to speak Chinese Mandarin to each other because why would they speak English in some of these circumstances?
If
right?
The entire movie took place in America, sure, but they go back to China. So why would they just all of a sudden speak, English all the time? And it's the same thing for Black Panther. You can't just have a movie set in Africa and then have like American accents.
It's exactly that. And I was thinking about it because the first 10 minutes of this movie, maybe 15, is the Tony Leung, Fala Chen just falling in love with each other, doing an amazing intro sequence. I have to say that again. It's just so good. The best falling in love sequence that I've seen on the big screen in a while.
I loved it.
I wish I met Laura that way, honestly. But yeah, the fact that they speak these languages and to the audience, they're like, yeah, I know you have kids. They got to learn how to read this stuff. Cause like, I think Bong Joon-ho from last year with Parasite said it best, where it's like, I'm paraphrasing, but basically like subtitles is like a barrier that you just have to overcome to experience like a wide breadth of amazing film.
Yeah.
That's what this is. Like, hey, we're not going to speak English because you don't understand. Learn to read. And then enjoy the film. And you get so much more out of it that way, right? Yeah. And also Ronnie Chang does an amazing joke later, which is just like...
I love Ronnie Chang. I guess I'll gush about him now. He's like so funny. I was like, when I first saw the trailer, I like leaped because I was like, oh my God, Ronnie Chang's in this. I had no idea Ronnie Chang was going to be in it. So funny. If you haven't seen his comedy special yet, it's hilarious. When I was in New York City, I was like trying to just hunt him down to see if I can go to any of his shows. But it seems like he's a very last minute guy and he'll kind of just pop up to comedy clubs.
He's a big guy now. He's doing a lot of stuff.
He is a big guy. He's hilarious. Definitely check out his stuff. But yeah,
he's in the movie for a very like short amount of time, but he's in it. And then like he's trying to speak to Aquafina in Chinese. And then Aquafina, which is really relatable, which is what I like about this movie. It's not a black and white of like, she knows Chinese. It's just not good. Right. And she says, oh, I'm sorry, my Chinese isn't really good. He's like, it's okay. I can speak ABC,
which is, I learned this recently, American born Chinese.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. I just thought it was funny the way he said it. And it's so good in that way. You mentioned this earlier when I was speaking about Fala Chen, the flashbacks and stuff like that. And I want to talk about that because I think that's a really crucial part of this movie, is that compared to a lot of other Marvel movies, they kind of introduce flashbacks throughout the entirety of the movie. They slowly show you Shang-Chi's past. You see Tony Leung's past. You see Munger Jang's past. You see everybody and all they have to go through, and Fala Chen as well. How did you think about the way they presented all that stuff? Did you feel like it broke up the action in like a jarring way, or did you feel like it was good?
It was good. I think it was very seamless. Like, it was necessary to build the relationships of both either Shang-Chi and his sister. I forget her name, Zhu Xiaoling. That's her character's name. That part, like all the flashbacks were so necessary. And I felt like it was done very smoothly in a way where it was just like, they'll start talking and then it goes into a flashback. I don't know. I really enjoyed it.
It's true. And like, I think a lot of movies, when they throw you a flashback and like, especially in the middle of the movie, they do flashbacks during the entire movie. They're like, man, just show me. Like, I just want to know what happens next in the actual like present day. With this movie, I was really interested to see their history because it was interesting. Because like Shang-Chi he grew up to become a killer, right? Like that was
Yeah.
his like story. His mother died. Shu Xiaoling's mother died. Like there was a lot of drama behind that, but it was also like the kid actors who also play them.
So adorable. I loved
Oh my God, they're
I
so
loved the
good.
little boy. And like when you think about it, it's like, wow, he had to experience some really like bad stuff in his childhood. And I have such great respect for like kid actors because they know, or not, it's not like they don't know about death, but like being told you have to act as if your mother just died and being a kid and having to do that,
It's
I thought
crazy.
it was
And there's two
amazing.
levels to it. There's like kid, and then like the
Mhm.
teenage version of
Teenager
them.
one, yeah.
And they do such a good job with this. And they don't even like pull their punches when it comes to like, oh, just because it's a flashback doesn't mean there's no action happening. Like you
Mhm.
see like the teenage Shang-Chi, like where he's just like doing his training and punching like that wooden
That was
pole,
so intense when they were like hitting him too, and he kind of just had to stand there while
deal
his
with
dad was
it.
like, "Good job, son." Like,
Or like he just like kicked the ass of like, I don't know, 15
mhm.
ninja like people. And you're like,
I
holy shit,
really enjoyed those sequences.
those are
I love
cool.
the flashbacks.
They are good. And I think they're well placed. And I think they add a lot to the story and they
Mhm.
break it up in such a good way, you know? And then at the beginning, they show a flashback. And then you have like the flight attendant interrupt, being like, do you want
Yeah.
beef or vegetarian? Which is like, this movie is not completely goes away from the Marvel formula. There's still comedy, but I
Mhm.
think it was funny. Like, I think it was like good funny and not cringy funny.
I felt like uh there wasn't too much comedy in this compared to, let's say, Ant-Man, but it was there at the right moments. And Aquafina's in it, so obviously she's gonna have like a big part in being, um,
Yeah.
I guess like the comedic relief or just like a funny character in general.
Well,
So,
let's just move on to that, to the funny character, I think, which is if you didn't know already, Ben Kingsley's in this movie playing Trevor Slattery, who is the Mandarin in Iron Man 3. Did you watch that movie?
no, so I was really confused when it got to that part. I was like, I don't know what's really going on here, but I guess I missed out on something because I didn't see something in another movie. But
That's interesting to me. So, did this character work for you at all?
hmm. He played a very minor part, but I
Mhm.
guess I don't even remember. I guess his function was to bring them to Talo, and
Yep. Oh,
would it
Tello.
have been good without him in it? Yeah, I don't know. I guess because I haven't seen all the other Marvel films,
He's only been
maybe
in
that.
one before that,
Okay.
but did he make you laugh? Did he make you feel like he brought comedic
Yes,
relief
yeah.
into the movie? Yeah.
Yeah, because like him and Morris were like a
Oh,
thing for a
Morris.
little bit. And yeah, those parts were just cute. So I think if they wanted to do the comedy with him, like they definitely nailed it there.
I'll quickly nerd out with Ben Kingsley, Trevor Slattery. So in Iron Man 3, the bad guy of the movie was the Mandarin. And
Oh,
people were
okay.
up in arms because they're like, well, that's not the real Mandarin. Because halfway through the movie in Iron Man 3, you realize that Ben Kingsley was playing the Mandarin as an
Oh, okay.
actor,
I see.
but he had no idea what it was. So he goes from like really intimidating as like a terrorist into like the goofy version that you see in Shang-Chi. That's his real personality,
Okay.
right? And then someone else, I think Guy Pearce plays he's the actual Mandarin in the movie in Iron Man 3. But it turns out in this movie that America was just trying to take on the name of the Mandarin, where actually Tony Leung's character is the real Mandarin.
hmm
That makes
hmm
sense. Yeah. It's a lot of like confusing stuff, but I think it still works for me because like this character still has agency in the movie where he's showing people how to get to Tao. He has a comedic relief and he has
hmm
like he's fighting for the village and stuff like that too, right?
hmm
Yeah. Okay, let's go into his sister, Simu Liu's sister in the movie, Xu Shaoling. What'd you think about her?
I feel like I've said this about every character, but I love them all.
Yeah,
I love the scene where they introduced her. I thought that was so badass. Like she's just a badass. Like her brother freaking fucked off to San Francisco, so she's like, great. I have to fend for myself now. So I really like that about her character.
yeah,
I
she's.
guess like
Go ahead,
I
go ahead.
think the thing with like a lot of female kind of led either female led movies or female characters, it's like they get things because they're like a woman, so they just deserve it. I think that's why a lot of movies might fail, like Charlie's Angel, like it just flopped because of that reason.
Yeah.
But she really like worked for it, and that's why she's a badass. It's not like, oh, because I'm a woman, I'm a badass. It's like,
Right.
no, my dad doesn't talk to me anymore. He didn't give a shit about me once my mom died, my brother left me. So what the hell am I supposed to do now? She escapes, starts this illegal fighting ring, and that's kind of like her backstory as to why she's such a badass. I loved it.
She's so cool with her like dart fighting, like with the big string, and she's like
Mhm.
kicking it around and like, is that what it's called? Like it's like do you know what I mean? It's like that rope and you kick
Is
it.
it under the umbrella of like nunchucks
I don't think so.
potentially?
I think
I
it's
don't
called like a
know.
dart arrow or something
Okay,
like that.
let's
But
just call it that.
that's, I don't. Okay, Justine and I are not martial artists. Forgive
Yeah,
us,
no.
okay? But I'm pretty sure that's what it's kind of called. And I agree with you completely. I think with her character, it's so interesting because she is very integral to the actual story of this movie.
Yeah.
She is the sister of Shang-Chi. She like plays a major role in like
Mhm.
the fight with Tao Lo. And as soon as she's introduced and she's just fighting and kicking ass, and she gets a lot of fun, amazing parts. And this actor, Munger Jang,
It's
this
her
is her
first.
first
Yeah.
acting role in
Mhm.
Hollywood. Insane. Like she's so talented. I think one of the things that really draw me to this actress is that the way she like smirks as she's fighting is really
Mhm. Mhm.
cocky, but I'm
Mhm.
like, that's so cool and
But so
badass. Like,
rightfully deserved. Like she has a reason to be cocky. She can kick ass. And I love the part where I think they're at the side of the scaffolds of the
oh,
building. And then like she technically left. Like she's in the elevator. She made it seem as if she left with Ronnie Chang's character. And then she comes back. She's like, now you know how it feels like to be left. So it's just
yeah.
such a funny part where I'm like, you go,
There's
girl.
a lot of good parts, even when she's like she makes eye contact with, spoilers, a dragon at the end of the movie, which we haven't even got to, but like the dragon and her like make eye contact. There's like a silent like agreement of like, yeah, you're gonna get on my back and we're gonna go kick ass together. And it's just like her character feels so much more, I guess, too. And she also gets like a quite a big arc because Michelle Yeoh's character says, hey, you can stop hiding in the shadows.
Mhm.
In Tao Lo, all of us, male, female, whoever, we all
Mhm.
train equally. And it just feels like, how did you have in a 2 hour movie resolve so many little like story arcs throughout it? It's
Mhm.
super impressive. And that kind of brings me to like, we've already talked about Michelle Yeoh, Fala Chen, Aquafina, now Munger Jang. Like, those are 4 female characters in the
Mhm.
movie that we've just gushed about. They are female power is huge in
Mhm.
Shang-Chi, but just like you talked
But it's
about,
not done in a corny way or
that's
like,
it.
you know what I mean? Like they're really well written characters. They each have such an integral part to the entire movie. Like she's his sister, Katie's his best friend, and then he has his aunt who then becomes like his maternal figure. His mom is obviously a big
Yeah,
role in this. So I think they're all important to one building his character as Shang-Chi and then their own too. So I hope
agreed.
they're in all the other Marvel movies.
Well, we
I
know
know
that
all of them won't be,
Shaling will
but
be. Shaling
oh
will
yeah,
be
yeah.
because the 10 rings are coming back, which are
Mhm.
awesome. Of course, they will be. And all right, let's move on to Simu Liu because I know
Oh
you
my
love him
God.
so much.
Yes.
Tell me your history with like you have a big feeling for Simu Liu. Let's hear it.
Yes, yes. Okay. So first became a fan when Kim's Convenience, it's kind of his breakout role. It's a Canadian sitcom about a family, a Korean family that owns uh, a convenience store in Toronto, and he is the son. So his name is Jung. He has a sister, Janet. So they're first generation Korean Canadians, and then his parents, Appa and Amma, they own the convenience store, and they kind of all actually no. They don't all work there because you find out that Jung and his dad, Appa, don't have a good relationship. So that's where I learned about Simu Liu, where I became a big fan, loved his character on the show, loved that show. Um, yeah, so that's kind of where I discovered Simu Liu. And then I also slid into his DMs and he
Uh,
responded. Okay.
Wow.
This was
Okay,
when
we
he
should
wasn't.
say like I feel like when you say slid into his DMs, it's always like I don't know, a sexual thing.
It wasn't at all. Like, okay, I didn't actually like slide into his DMs. I was walking down Queen Street and an actual Kim's Convenience. That's where they shoot the exterior of the show. And I saw it. I had no idea it was there. Like, I didn't mean to go there. I was just walking down Queen Street. I took a picture of it, and in my caption, I said, "Where's Jung?" And then I text Simu Liu. And then he responded saying, "Sorry, Jung isn't in Toronto right now, but he'll see you when he's back." So I was like, oh my God, is he flirting with me?
You're ready to break up with your long-term boyfriend.
Yes. I was like, this might be my shot, because he wasn't like a Marvel superstar at this point. He was just doing Kim's Convenience, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, and he wasn't even a couple weeks ago, right? Like, people are starting to pay attention to him, but as soon as Shang-Chi hit, like, all of his numbers like went up, you know, like Twitter followers, just like him posting stock photos of himself on Twitter and stuff like that. Like, he's made it. Now he's made it.
Because prior to that, I was watching him on Kim's Convenience, and then on a couple of YouTube videos by another Asian production company called Wong Fu.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with them.
Yeah, they came from YouTube, right?
Yeah, they're like a production company, started with YouTube, and he's in a lot of their videos. So that's kind of where, I'm not going to say like true fans, because everyone's a fan of Simu Liu now, but I'm going to say that's probably where they first might have learned about him, is either through Kim's Convenience or Wong Fu.
Right. And in terms of seeing him in this movie on the big screen, because he's never done a movie before, and now he's got a Marvel movie. You can read like how he got into the Marvel movie. We're not going to go through all of those, like him tweeting it to Marvel and all that stuff, whatever. You can see all that later. But like, how did you feel about him in this movie? And did it work on the big screen for you?
At first, I was like, damn it, now I'll never have a chance with him, because he's so famous now. I was so happy when I learned that he got the role. One, because like he's Asian. Two, he's Canadian too.
Yeah.
And he's from Mississauga. So there's just that Canadian pride there that, wow, like he made it. He's going to be representing Canada. He like won the lottery of life, like starting with a small but very successful show. And then to get a movie that has such like a global reach was insane.
Biggest franchise in the world, right? Like this is a huge deal. And like, I'm jumping again, but like for me, Shang-Chi, spoilers, is I've been thinking about this a lot. First of all, I think it's the best origin Marvel movies that we've had so far. There's like over 20 some movies of Marvel movies in terms of the origin story ones, like Thor, Captain America, Black Panther, like all these ones. Shang-Chi just for me is the best one. It's just so freaking good. And then in terms of like where it places and like, is it a top 5 Marvel movie? For me, absolutely. In fact, maybe top 3. Like, it's that good. And it's so crazy that like Simu Liu comes in out of nowhere with this character that nobody cares about. Like the comic book that I read was okay. Like Shang-Chi was like not, he was fine. Like he's cool, but it's like, I don't know. It's not that crazy to read in a comic book. And it's crazy to me that you take this small character and blow him up into this global phenomenon, right? Like, I think there's a lot of negative people out on the internet. Usually when a movie comes out, they're like telling you how shitty it is. And like, you know, there's definitely some,
like
seeing
it yet, or just from the trailer.
There's still people like that for Shang-Chi, because there's obviously just shitheads everywhere. But like, more than not, it's mostly people saying how good it is. And that is rare, you know? So I'm just so happy that Simu was able to just like get into that, because he seems like a genuinely nice guy. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he responded to my DMs. So
I mean, that's all it takes to be a nice guy. I think his charisma and his like just promotion for the film went a long way too, because for a little while, he was the only one promoting Shang-Chi. Like even Marvel hasn't even like promoted Shang-Chi yet. It almost seemed like they were giving up on it before they released the movie. And because like first, I forget the current CEO of Disney, Bob Iger. Maybe it's someone else.
No
right
idea.
Now.
I don't know. Mickey Mouse.
Mickey Mouse. He was saying how like Shang-Chi being released exclusively in theaters was an experiment. And Simu Liu was like, hey, we're not an experiment. We're like breaking glass doors or ceilings and stuff like that. And like, this is going to be a fucking event and you just wait. And it was. And that's so cool. It's so cool that he was able to do that. So he's not even just a strong character in the movie, but in real life, he seems like a really good person, you know?
He's a big advocate for just amplifying Asian voices. Like he was very, I guess, loud or when, like all this violence against Asian people was happening because of COVID or whatever. He was
Yeah.
not silent at all. And yeah, he's had a big voice in any type of stuff that has to do with either celebrating Asian people or it's just bringing awareness to all, I guess, like the shit that Asian
Hmm.
people might have gotten from COVID. Yeah, so I was so happy to hear that he got the role, and it was so cool, like the him getting announced at Comic-Con,
Hmm.
seeing all the tweets he had tweeted at Marvel like prior to it even being a thing. So yeah, that was really nice to watch.
And just him kicking ass on this big screen. Like think about like the bus fight. Like let's go back to like the things
Yeah.
in the actual movie.
Mhm.
Like fuck the bus fight. Are you kidding me? The fight on the scaffolding alongside the building. Amazing. Let's talk about the friggin' like him exploding a dragon at the end of the movie. Like
Yeah,
come
I
on.
remember that from the trailer. Like he's in the water, it's like very quiet, and then this like dragon just comes out of nowhere.
Oh
That was
man.
amazing.
Like not even just that part, like at the very end of the movie when he's fighting the evil blood
Hmm.
sucking, soul sucking dragon, and he's like has the rings is pressing down on that dragon and he's in the air falling down but still doing like
Mm.
kung fu in the air, and then he just does a movement that like explodes the dragon into like a million guts and you're like
I remember that. Yeah.
fuck, that's cool.
Yeah.
um let's take a second on the dragons for just a quick sec here. Do you feel like the dragons were too much for this film? I think I've heard from some people that like dragons. Like I thought this was just a martial arts movie. Did dragons ruin it for you?
I don't think so. It had like kind of, I don't want to say it's a minor part, but you don't get that many dragons until the end fight scene.
Yeah,
It's mostly like human to human
yeah.
combat until the end, like kind of war. Also, with Marvel movies, you already get like mythological, like
Thank you.
crazy villains in the first place. So why would it be such a shock that there's a dragon in it?
Thank you. Okay, I've been seeing this and like on online and stuff, and people are like, "Well, the movie was good until there was a dragon in it," and I'm like, "Are you fucking kidding me?
But
There's
isn't
been
like Age of
aliens and
Ultron? Yeah, like aliens. I've
yeah.
totally I forgot the word, but yes, aliens are a big part in the Marvel movies. So why is it such a shock that there's
There's also
a dragon?
so many weird things out there in the Marvel universe that like dragons in this mystical realm called Tao Lo. It's not even on Earth; it's in a
Yeah,
realm. It's
yeah.
like that's fine because they ground it. Even though they're riding dragons, he explodes a dragon. I know that I just said grounded, but like he's still using like his like martial arts. Like
Mhm.
they're fighting like they would like a regular human. He does get the rings later, but he still fights like he's fighting like a human. Like it doesn't, even though there's grand things happening around him, it all feels like it makes sense to this universe, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
And like
Anyway.
with like I feel like with Chinese culture, there's a lot of like mythical creatures, a lot of I don't know what the word is. There's so many like legends and like
Mhm.
folklore around dragons and I don't know, all that stuff. Like when you think about Chinese New Year, you have the rat, the snake. So
Yeah.
animals are a big part in Chinese culture. So it just made sense that
It makes
dragons were in this
sense. I
movie.
love when they go to Tao Lo and there's like this like crazy cool Asian inspired animals and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
we haven't talked about it too much, but like the Asian culture in this movie and how they represent it is so amazing. Not just in Tao Lo when you see dragons and like this mystical creatures, but right, even if you think about like the early parts of the film where Simu Liu's character Shang-Chi goes to like Katie's house and
Mhm.
her grandmother's there, her
Yeah.
mother's there, brother's there. They're all sitting at the table.
Mhm.
Her grandmother is saying you can't sit here because that's where Wakong is, and that's like
Mhm.
the grandfather, right, who's passed away. And like these tiny moments where I'm like, holy shit, that's like my family right there. Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know, like
You
when
saw
that,
the shrine in the background where that's probably where they put the picture of the grandpa. San Francisco has such a big Asian community to begin with. So it just, they did like a shot of them going, probably not even Chinatown. It was just like a dim sum restaurant that probably exists in San Francisco because there's such a big Asian community there already. So
so cool, So cool. All right. And I want to talk about one last character, and I have a few more questions afterwards. I know there's a big Shang-Chi episode, but Justine and I had to reschedule for today. So
Yeah,
we have
due
a lot to
to
say.
internet problems. So
It's
sorry
okay. We're
about
talking now.
that.
I want to talk about, for my money, top 2 Marvel villains of all time. I want to talk about Tony Leung's character, Wenwu, and
Or the Mandarin.
or the Mandarin. He goes by a lot of names. But what did you think about this character?
I loved it, like I did with all the other characters. He's an interesting villain because the reason why he wants to go to Ta Lo is with very pure intentions. It's to get his wife back. He's been like seduced by the dark side. I'll just call him that. I forget what
Darth Vader, yes.
He's been seduced by Darth Vader, and he just wants to get his family back together. He wants his wife back in his life, and it's a very pure motive. But then you think of like how warped his mind is because he lost like the love of his life. He was willing to give up immortality for her, which he did at one point. But now that she's gone and he wants her back, he's going to do what it takes. Like he's obviously very clouded. His judgment is clouded, but you kind of have to kind of take into account like what has happened to him up until this point. His children have left him, even though he technically knew where they were the whole time.
Yeah.
I thought he was a
very interesting, his character, because everything you said is completely right. But if you think about before that, he was like a freaking war criminal. Like
he's a war criminal.
Centuries of his life.
He's old, but he's
fucking
hot.
up shit. Like he got these 10 rings, which we'll talk about in a second, like very early on from like a tomb or whatever. They barely say. And he went on conquering the world and gaining more power, changing the trajectory of history in the Marvel universe and all this other stuff. And then he falls in love, gives it all up, finds out that maybe he can change. And then she dies because of things that he's done in his past. And then he goes back into like, I guess I should be like a dick again. And then it shifts again where he's like, oh, he has an opportunity, quote unquote, to save the love of his life and maybe go back to the place where he was when he was just purely happy and he didn't have to burn down a village or a city or country or anything. He could just be with his family. And I think that's such a strong villain motive that we don't see in other Marvel movies,
Typically with other Marvel movies that I can remember, they're just after power, which he was too at one point until he discovered his wife. But yeah, it was just a different story to a villain. I kind of like Thanos. What does he want? Just power, I guess.
No, Thanos. When I say top 2 villains, I think Thanos is one of the more layered villains because he wants his own version of peace, and he thinks he's a hero where he wants to like save the universe by, equaling it out by destroying half of it. Yeah,
he definitely has more layers to him. Same with Wenwu.
Yeah.
But yeah, all the other Marvel villains, it's like, I just want
hit
more
or
power.
miss.
Like Thor. I'm thinking of Thor specifically, the first Thor. It's like such a boring villain.
I think who was the villain? This was not Loki, because like Loki's a villain, and I think Thor. So he's
okay.
A good
aside
villain.
from Loki,
okay. Let me name you some good ones.
Thor, wasn't it just like a alien type of ice monster? I don't know.
A little
Sorry
bit,
to
but
all
it was
the Marvel
Loki.
fans out there. Was it Loki?
It was Loki, but there's the
But
second
he's one
movie.
of the better villains. Loki
Yes.
is one of the better villains.
The second movie was garbage, like in terms of villains and stuff like that for Thor. He was like a dark elf, Malekith.
Okay,
Anyways, I won't get into him. He's boring. But I think about the good villains. I think about Killmonger, which from Black Panther. I think about Vulture, Michael Keaton's character from Spider-Man Homecoming. I think about Wenwu and Thanos and Loki. Those are like the 5 that I think about. Everyone else is like kind of like teetering on like, whatever.
Like no surprise there. Like, yeah, you're a villain. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, like
but
I just watched Black Widow the other day, and like the villain in the movie is good. And then you have Taskmaster, which is like the pitched like Hollywood poster villain, which this villain doesn't even talk. So you have no emotional attachment to Taskmaster in that movie. But Wenwu, you get just as much screen time almost as the main character, which helps so much. You see Wenwu in flashbacks. You see Wenwu. I think an amazing thing about Tony Leung is that, first of all, he's a legendary Hong Kong actor who's won multiple awards and accolades out there. Now he's like making it in like America, for example, with like a very good English accent, like American accent, like very understandable. And he's really good at portraying, like it, you can see it that he's a really seasoned actor because of the way he acts in his face, in his eyes.
With his eyes. Yeah. Like that's why I love that scene where he meets his wife. You can just see it in his eyes. Like he's so smitten for her already, but he's going to try to kick her ass. Kind of, not really.
But sexy kick her ass.
Yeah.
Like not kill her, but kick her ass. And he loses.
Yes.
The scene that I'm thinking about with him is there's a scene where he's explaining to everyone that like, hey, your mother's talking to me and I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. I hear her. I feel her. I touch her. And he turns out he was being manipulated.
Yeah.
And you see a picture of him and his wife, and she's like, don't worry, we'll be together soon. And he looks at the picture, and in his eyes, you can see how heartbroken he is. And the fact that like his kids don't believe him. He feels like he's alone in the world. He needs to like save the one person that's ever loved him. And you see that just in his eyes. There's nothing else that's said about it. And you're like, damn, this guy's a good actor, you know? Yeah. I have nothing but good things to say about this villain and just Tony in general. Like even him when he's angry and commanding, you know, when he's like telling Simu Liu and Xiaoling just like, hey, shut the fuck up. Like I'm trying to save your mother right now. Or like later when he goes to invade the village or whatever, there's this older guy who's like, yes.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, you're not allowed in this village because we told you can't be here. And Tony's just like,
shut up, little man.
Yeah, shut up, young man. I'm like 10 times your age. Sit down. And it's like, fuck.
This shortly after where he says like, burn it all down. So badass. Like, I love that part. I think he's a great villain because you see all these layers to him. Like he's obviously a good dad. He's a good husband. He's a good person, but he does obviously have these horrible faults, and I think that's what makes him, you kind of want to root for him at some point.
He's sympathetic, but I think there's a point where it's like he's done irredeemable stuff. He can't be redeemed because he's done terrible things. Shang-Chi even says like, would our mother even want to see you right now?
That part was like hard. That was a crazy fight scene to watch because as much as it was like physical combat, it was like just insults after insults.
Oh my God. Loved it. And they're fighting with the freaking rings going back and forth. And you're like, Jesus, this is intense. And I find like a lot of third act fighting with the bad guy. This is why I think Shang-Chi's better than like the first Iron Man, is because like Iron Man 1, you fight Jeff Bridges and it's like over in a second. It's lame. But with like Shang-Chi and Wenwu, they're fighting and there's like tension. There's family drama. They're both love their mother and like, or Fa La Chen's character, but one of them's distorted and it's just like really like, oh man, I feel bad for both of you.
Yeah, because one he lost his mother and then the other lost his wife, and that's kind of, I guess, what held them all together. Yeah. And then there's so much there's so much tension in that scene. It's just so hard to watch because who are you rooting for? I don't know. Who's to blame? Obviously, like Wenwu more so is to blame. Yeah. The part where he was like, you watched your mother die. Like I was like, duh.
It's like
he was
7. And like when before he dies and he like they do this really fun, cool ring fight kind of thing. And when like takes the rings, saves Shang-Chi from like the giant soul sucking dragon looking thing, which honestly looks fucking awesome. All the dragon stuff looks so cool. And then he gives all the rings to Shang-Chi, right? And in that moment, he's just like, here you go, my son. Like everything that I've taught you and worked towards, and like I know I've trained you to be a killer. And you can tell like all in this movement of like, I'm just sorry. Here's the rings. I hope you do better than I did, kind of thing. So much communication and no words spoken in that moment, you know? So good. So good. Okay.
Amazing. Yeah.
Few more things here and then we'll get going. I know there's a long episode today, but I'm telling you, there's just so much to talk about here. I want to talk about something more personal to you, I guess. And did this movie this is gonna sound ridiculous, but did this movie make you think about your own Asianness?
Yes. I
Yes.
think
Can you expand on that
we talked
more?
about this a little bit, but we wanted to save it for for this
Yeah.
podcast, obviously. Yeah, it's like to see yourself represented on screen in the mainstream media. It definitely takes you back to when that didn't exist at all. When I grew up, the only Asian actor or actress I could think of is Brenda Song. Um, I don't think you even know her because
Oh, I
she's
do.
way. Oh,
Oh,
you
I
do?
do. I
Okay.
do. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
can't remember who we were talking about with, and they're like, I have no idea who it is. Um,
No, I know
but
Brenda
yeah,
Song.
yeah. Anyways, that was the only person I got to kind of like look up to and be like, oh my gosh, she kind of looks like me. Yeah, this movie kind of makes you think about how were you represented in media? How did you feel about growing up being Asian? What I loved about this movie is like, no offense to half Asian people. I love that they casted full Asian actors and actresses because in Crazy Rich Asians, a lot of them are half white, I think.
Oh,
And
really?
it's
I didn't
like,
know that. Yeah.
honestly, I don't know if they are half white, but I feel like some of them were. So it's like, yeah, I don't know.
Right.
I
This
think
when they
like,
go all the way with like
mhm,
casting and like writers too, like Ronnie Chang
mhm,
and stuff like that actually wrote for this movie, like
mhm.
it's not, I think like a lot of Asian things on the outside, even Kim's Convenience, for example, like it is a very Asian represented
Mhm.
thing on the surface level. But I think a lot of the writers are white, for
Yeah,
example.
that's part of why the reason Kim's Convenience like ended because their creator Ins Choi decided to leave and they thought, how could we do this show justice if he's not even in it anymore? He's the original creator. He knows the characters. What's the point? That's like part of the reason why it ended. I don't know the full story,
Sure.
obviously,
But you can ask
but
Simu next time he slides into
yeah,
your
maybe
DMs.
maybe next time we'll go for dinner and I'll ask him. But he was very angry about it. So
Yeah.
um yeah. Every time like any type of full Asian led um whether it's like a movie or a show comes out, it kind of just makes you think a little bit about yourself. And
I want to
I
talk
think
about that too, because like I think you're like me in the way that we are both first generation, but like the struggle of being Asian
mhm,
Canadian is different. And I think you and I might have had a similar upbringing in that way, and just personality wise too, where for myself, I was always kind of trying to be more white than Asian.
yeah,
And I don't know how to say that better.
same. I think to the Asian listeners out there, they can relate. I feel like at one point in your life, you're like, I wish I was white. Like,
Yeah.
why am I Asian? And yeah, when I was younger, I definitely rejected a lot of, Vietnamese culture. But growing up, I mean, now I'm like 24. I love being Asian and I love learning more about whether it's Vietnamese food or like Vietnamese culture or just any other country in Asia. I love learning about the culture there because you rejected it for so long. And like, whether or not you're like Korean, you can still enjoy Kim's Convenience and relate to it,
Yeah.
even if you're not Korean, even if you're not Asian. Um, I just think as immigrant kid, no, sorry, if you have immigrant parents,
Yeah.
we kind of all share that kind of feeling of like, oh, I wish I was this, I wish I was
Oh,
that, I hate my food, it smells bad, blah, blah, blah. Just like those stereotypical things you hear about. It's true though.
yeah.
Um,
That's one of the
yeah.
few things that I didn't hate about being Asian. I thought the food always ruled.
Oh,
Like that was my favorite.
when I was younger, I was like, oh, I don't want to bring this to school, Mom. Can
Oh,
I
you don't want
have
to bring like a
grilled
quail
cheese?
egg?
I don't want to bring fish sauce to school, Mom. It's gonna
Oh,
stink.
yeah. I
But
brought fish sauce to school a lot. And people are
it
like,
tastes
what the
good, but it
fuck?
smells a little fishy.
No pun intended. It really does taste fishy.
But yeah, now that I'm older, like I love being
Yeah.
Asian, and I also love being like Canadian at the same time. So it's kind of a balance of, yeah, I'm
Mhm.
Asian Canadian, but love both sides kind of equally.
I think this movie, that's why I think it's a cinematic event. And I've posted about this on Twitter and Facebook and whatever, but I'll say it here. I just think like this movie, I feel so good about the people growing up now watching this movie. If you're a
Mhm.
kid, first generation, second generation, Asian, Canadian, American, whatever, and you're watching this movie, you see not just yourself, but that you can make it, you know, and that you
Mhm.
shouldn't shy away from your own culture. This movie embraces Asian culture like something I've never seen before, but also embraces like the Canadian aspects, the American aspects of it too,
Mhm.
right? It's all of it. It's all part of who you are, which is what this movie talks about too. They're like,
Mhm.
hey,
Mhm.
all of the things before you, that's who you are. Why do
Yeah.
you reject that? And for myself, like I spent 9 years at Vietnamese school and I did my best to not learn anything because I'm like, why the fuck would I need to learn
Yeah.
Vietnamese? And I really struggle right now to this day speaking Vietnamese to my parents, to my grandparents. I can understand it, but I'm very terrible at speaking it. I
Mhm.
rejected my culture for so long. I couldn't wait to get out of like if we went to like temple to pray. I'm technically Buddhist. I wouldn't ask any questions. I just couldn't wait to go home to play video games, for example, you know, like
Mhm.
did not care for that stuff, but love the food. The food
It's
was great.
amazing. Culture just as amazing. Wish I had recognized that earlier instead of rejecting it.
Right. I just think it's an amazing thing that people can watch this film now and be inspired to be themselves and even be inspired to become an Asian actor and make it, you know? Like I
Mhm.
think we're getting to a point where uh, I think Asians are really underrepresented in Hollywood.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of colored people and just everybody like women, black and Mexican and like there's so many demographics that are underrepresented, but I
Mhm.
really think that Asians are very, very much on the lower end of that totem pole. We don't get talked
Mhm.
about like at all. And Shang-Chi is one of those movies that is going to kind of give us permission to be like, hey, look at us. Look at what we did. We killed the box office.
Mhm.
We're in a pandemic right now. That's
Mhm.
crazy how much money this movie made. Like over 100 million easily, right? Like that's insane. So anyways, kind of going back to like watching this movie, I feel like changed something inside of me where I've always liked being center of attention. I kind of liked, you're like, really, Tom? I've always wanted to become an actor in some sense, like in the way that like I always thought about it, but never gave myself full permission because I'm like, well, there's no fucking way I'm going to make it. You know,
Mhm.
like, why would I try for something that will never happen? Oh, and then you make up all the excuses like, I'll live away from like the big cities where you can make it. Oh, my parents will be disappointed in me, which will happen regardless. And it's just like, I don't know. There's something inside of me that changed that, like, in the back of my head, ever since watching Shang-Chi, I'm like, wow, like, could I do this really? Like, could I become an Asian artist? I don't have to be an actor, but like,
Mhm.
can I pursue the things that I love in this Western society and be okay and
Mhm.
feel good about it and still make my and represent my Asianness in a really good way? It's starting to make me think these things.
Mhm.
And before my tangent's completely over, it's made this movie, it's a lot, but it's made me look at commit to things like therapy. And I've been looking at like how to speak Southern Vietnamese because of this movie. Cause I'm like, damn it, like I'm really struggling with the Asian side of my Asian Canadianness. And I
Mhm.
need to find a way to tap into this without speaking to my parents because they will not understand. They'll be like, shouldn't you already know how
Yeah.
to speak Vietnamese?
Yeah.
You know? Anyways, there's a lot to say about this. I'm wondering like if this movie had any of that type of impact to you or made you think in this way kind of thing.
I think just it just made me more like reflective of like what I had growing up versus what I had now in terms of like just what I could see myself in terms of just like what was represented in media. Probably not the same effect, but
Mm-hmm.
still, this is like a huge movie. Same for like Crazy Rich Asians when I watched that, or even like Parasite. I was just like, wow,
Yeah.
the Asian community is like breaking into mainstream media, and I'm all here for it.
Yeah.
I love seeing other Asian people being successful.
Yeah. And it's because they embrace that side of them, right?
Mhm.
And that's kind of the reason why this switch inside of me has been like, hey, maybe I should like pay more attention to that side of myself, the thing that I've rejected my entire life.
Mm.
I'm 31 years old. I can barely speak to my grandparents and they know that I'm like doing half-ass Vietnamese because I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know the words. I'm sorry. And I feel like it's okay. We're starting to get permission to be like, hey, you don't have to reject that side of yourself anymore. You can be Asian. You can be it all. You can do it, right? So last thing that I want to talk about is let's quickly touch upon, did you like Wong in this movie? And Wong is the sorceress that,
From Doctor Strange. Yeah.
Doctor Strange. And mostly, do you like Hotel California?
Oh, okay. Wong I didn't even think he was going to be in this movie. Like,
Yeah.
nothing crazy there. I like his character in Doctor Strange, so that was cool that he was
He's
in
fun.
it
He's
and
fun
that
in this
he's
movie.
in the yeah, he's like very mind of art,
Yeah.
very funny. Hotel California, I don't even know if I've ever listened to that song from like beginning to end. Like you
Yeah.
know the chorus, but like that's kind
Yeah.
of it.
I would want to karaoke with Aquafina, Simu Liu, and Benedict Wong, Hotel California, and just sing the chorus with them because those post-credit scenes, juicy, juicy. Did you like those? Like, do you care about the greater Marvel universe?
I don't think I like care for it as much as like probably you and other Marvel fans, but I'll stick around to watch it just to kind of see what might happen. It's also because like I don't watch, I haven't watched all the Marvel movies, but I
Yeah.
think I've watched up until the point where, okay, I understand that we're post Tony Stark world now. He's no longer in the picture.
Yeah.
What's going to happen next? Obviously, they're setting this up for Eternals, which I'm excited about because one, I've already talked about this, Richard Madden.
And he's hot.
Second, yeah, and he's hot. But Gemma Chan is in it, and she's another like very successful Asian actress that I love because
her second Marvel movie, in fact, she was in Captain Marvel as like a villain character minor, and they're like, you know
so
what?
how does that
They just
work?
ignore it.
Okay.
Yeah, they've done that for a few people now. They're like, oh, we really messed up. You should have been in this bigger role over here.
Okay. I was like, wait. Oh, I didn't watch Captain Marvel.
That's okay. It's a good movie. It's good.
Okay.
But I mean, Shang-Chi, what are we talking about here? Like this is the only movie that matters now. I think.
Yeah.
I want to see it again, truthfully. I really do. Like
I'm gonna watch it again. Hopefully, I don't know if I'll watch it in theaters again. It'll depend if my friends want to see it or not, but I'll watch it when it comes out to
it'll come out soon.
Disney
Apparently,
Plus,
it's the release schedule on Disney Plus is like much shorter for movies in general, so it should be like next month where you can see it on Disney Plus. Which I mean, don't quote me on that, but I think that's how it is. And a last question is: do you want to have a cosplay of these rings now? Do you want to have? Would you dress up as Wenwu or Shang-Chi and wear these like bracer rings around your wrist? And is that cool?
I would want to dress up as Xu Xiaoling because she has a really cool like black outfit when she's first introduced.
Oh yeah.
I really liked her outfit there. She looks
cool.
it was like black pants, like a tight black top. So I would cosplay as her if anything. I'm not a big cosplay person. I've never gone to like Fan Expo or Comic Con, but the people get really into it and they like make their own props and sew their own costumes. Huge respect for it. But
yeah, I immediately looked for a Shang-Chi costume and like just to see, and it was like so much money, but none of them had the rings, and I'm like, you gotta include the rings.
You can make your own, I'm sure, like
out of what? I was already thinking
paper mache or like I don't know, foam boards. I'm sure someone's gonna do it and do like a tutorial on YouTube. But I really liked his like scale.
Oh yeah,
his scaly shirt.
Well, it's dragon armor shirt, right?
Yeah.
Like I love the rings in this movie. I think they move cool. I think
they seem really heavy. Like every time like Tony Leung kind of like rests on his own hand, I'm like, you can hear the bangles. I'm like, oh, holy crap.
When he in the flashback, when he like completely fucks up those people and like they're like, hey, I don't know where they are, and he like shoots one of the rings at that guy to like kill him, and you see like young Shang-Chi. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't think.
It's like
where he gets like revenge on his.
Yeah.
Oh, that part was like so badass because they're just walking into this like kind of low key, I don't know,
like restaurant,
like kind of a bar, and like the kid's just there, and he's like, "What's gonna happen, Dad?" And then like he just freaking punches the table. It's so loud. It's so epic. And you have to watch that in the theaters. Like it's just,
This movie is a good theater movie, I
yeah.
think. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the rings are really cool. I think they're like in the comic books, they're really different. They're like actual
Okay.
just rings on your fingers, and they all
That's
have
boring.
superpowers. Like every ring is like, I forget exactly, but it's like this one controls like fire. This one controls like, it's almost like Infinity Stones, but rings. But I liked it in this movie because they just felt like, I love the bracer look on them.
Mhm.
And I love how when they're fighting, even though it's like magical rings, it felt like they were just fighting martial arts kung fu style. And it didn't always feel like, I don't know, like a superpower. Do you know what I mean by
Yeah,
that?
I think for Wenwu's character, like he's still like really good at kung fu. The rings are kind of just an extension
Yeah.
to make sure that he doesn't ever die. But at the end of the day, it's more so kung fu
Yeah.
than anything. And then the rings just are like the cherry on top so that he doesn't die.
Yeah.
But I
I,
feel like they kind of are like a last resort. It's mostly kung fu until it's like, oh shit, I might actually die. Let me use the rings.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's so cool. Oh, that dragon exploding, so cool. Okay, finally, we've reached the end of the podcast. I didn't mention this, but I saw Wenwu Dilf trending on Twitter.
He
And
is,
is he a
I think
Dilf?
so. Yeah, he's so handsome.
He is
Like,
very handsome.
he,
Yeah,
yeah, hot for sure.
he's
I
hot.
think so. We'll
He,
see. I think I'm gonna like binge watch his movies after because I don't know
oh,
much else about him.
he's in such good movies. You gotta watch. I think it's called Grandmaster. It's so good. But he he's 59 years old. Think about that for a second. My dad is only a couple more years older than
Yeah, I
him,
think my dad is only a couple of years older than him
and I'm
too,
like,
but
Tony Leung looks fucking hot. Like,
yeah, and it's also like Fala Chen is quite young. She's on the younger side too, but like him and her together didn't look odd at all.
right?
I really like them together.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing.
Okay, here it is. Justine, we're at the end of the conversation on Shang-Chi. Any final thoughts, and how would you rate this movie?
10 out of 10, 5 stars in Animal Crossing.
Five-star island.
Yeah, it's a 5 star island if it was an Animal Crossing. Love the cast. It was just such like a beautiful movie. Like we didn't touch on it a lot, but I love the costumes in the movie, especially when
Yeah.
they go to Ta Lo. It's just so lush and green, and the colors just play so well with each other. Like the robes they're wearing, the red. Yeah, it was a beautifully done movie. I feel like a lot of people won't say that for Marvel movies because a lot of it is CGI.
Yeah,
Regardless of how much CGI was in it, I loved the set. It was amazing.
I agree. I know one friend of mine was like, the CG was like distracting here and there. And I'm like, okay, I guess like towards the end when there's a lot of dragon stuff going on, I guess, but like the spectacle of it, like overshadowed my like film critiqueness of it, if that makes sense. I was like so invested in what's happening that I let myself become like a child again and not have to watch movies
Mhm.
in the lens of like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I
Like a
just,
movie critic, like just enjoy it for what it is. It's a great movie.
it's so good.
I don't think you need to be even a Marvel fan to enjoy it.
Hmm. I agree. I've heard,
Yeah.
I think one of the things, and I would rate this movie, I mean, it's really obvious, but 10 rings out of 10 rings.
10 rings out of 10. I don't know why I didn't think of that, man.
And I truly think it's like top 3 Marvel movies, like with Endgame and like Infinity War, like that type of stuff up there.
Mhm.
I think it's top 2 Marvel villains, maybe top 1, like just because of how Asian he is and how like good the performance is with Tony Leung and the
Mhm.
action, the choreography, everything. The story is so good. And what it means to me, it's really hard
Yeah.
to separate what this movie means to me. It's a superhero movie, yes.
Yeah,
But I
but
think it's more
it's
than
not
that.
just another it's not just another Marvel movie. Like it was really big. It was a really big event.
Yeah.
Um,
And I don't
yeah.
think, like you said, you need to watch these other Marvel
Mhm.
movies. There's references with Wong's character. You see Abomination. You might even know who that is. Like you see like Trevor Slattery, the original Mandarin in Iron Man 3. These characters that like weave themselves in the story, but there's not like this thing where like, oh, well, you're not gonna get it. You didn't watch those other ones, you know?
Mhm.
Like you already kind of get who these characters are just by seeing them in this movie. And the only setup for future movies is in the post-credit scenes, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have nothing but good things to say about this movie. So that's our conversation about
Yeah.
Shang-Chi. Holy shit. Oh my God. We did
Go
it.
out and see it in theaters if you can. It was a really good movie to see in theaters.
Yeah. I get a lot of people, which I actually really like because I made a whole post about it on Facebook and stuff. But I've had like a handful of people message me after they watch Shang-Chi as if I'm the one who like created it or something like that. I don't know. It's just really endearing to me because I clearly have many emotional attachments to this movie already for this new movie. And people are like, Tuong, I love Shang-Chi. And I'm like, thank you. I made it. It's
like, you're welcome. If it
yeah.
wasn't for me talking about it. Yeah.
It kind of goes back to this because I think some people, when they read my posts in general, and I mean, maybe I'm thinking too much about myself, but I think about they see it and they're like, oh, well, Tuong only loves it because of this Asian angle of it, you know? And I'm like, well, yes, but I just think it's a good movie on its own. If you try to separate it from all of the significance of what it means to be an Asian and all this other stuff that we talked about before, discovering your
and
Asian
just
self,
look at it as a movie. Like, look at
so
it like
good.
that. Yeah, I really liked it. I think it's more than a superhero villain movie. It's about like family. It's about trauma, I guess. It's about grief at the same
Yeah.
time. And you just see all these relationships between Shang-Chi and his mom. Like, that's just so beautiful to watch. And then it's a bit of a love story at the beginning of the movie too. So there's just so many elements to it where it's just more than just your typical superhero badass movie where they kick ass. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Justine, we did it. We talked for a very long time, but that's okay. Hey, how do you have anything to plug for the people at home?
Oh my God, I feel like I'm on Hot Ones.
Yes, without the actual chicken
Yeah.
wings to eat. Yes.
If you liked any of what I said, or if you're curious about pastries, follow me on Instagram, Justine Flan, Flan like the dessert, Flan. That's kind of about it. I don't have much going on. So
I was gonna say, I thought you were gonna plug your LinkedIn for a second, and I'm like,
no,
oh my
gosh, no,
God.
then you'll find out where we work, even though you can just like look me up, but I don't care
Yeah.
about that aspect.
Do you
I care
update your
about
LinkedIn?
I do for like just my job title, but I won't do anything beyond that. Last thing I'll say, I did have to post on LinkedIn to enter a giveaway for a like prize at work,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and I didn't win, so I deleted the post right after.
Wow.
I'm pretty
dare
sure.
you? How dare you? I thought, can you post about Shang-Chi on LinkedIn, or is that
I
not
wouldn't
allowed?
even do that. I don't like LinkedIn influencers. I'm sorry if you are one. I just don't like LinkedIn. It's great for job searching. I'll just say that. But yeah, follow me on
Justine, you
Instagram,
have to be
not
really
on
careful
LinkedIn.
of what you say on this podcast because all we have is LinkedIn people who listen to this podcast.
No way.
Biggest fan base. Yeah. After this, they send me a business connection
Oh,
email
gosh.
being like, hey, Tuong, can we connect about your no?
Okay, I was like,
no.
really? That's crazy. I thought your like traction would come from Instagram or Facebook.
Imagine if it was LinkedIn though, or like Tumblr or something.
Oh God.
For myself, you can find the rest of the shows in the Pod Cavern at www.podcavern.com. Check it all out. Before we end today's conversation, Justine, I didn't tell you about this, but all of our guests end with a world famous catchphrase, and they say anything they want for their catchphrase, and your catchphrase goes like this.
Cuckoo, cuckoo.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Hey, everyone. I just wanted to make a quick note over here. Now, Justine and I talked about Shang-Chi a lot throughout this podcast, and there's so much to celebrate. And as soon as we finished our call, we were like, oh, no, we forgot to mention this and that and this and that. And yes, we definitely missed a lot, but we'd be remiss not to mention at least Shang-Chi and The Legend of the Ten Rings, the album, which is played throughout the entirety copy of the movie. You can find it on Apple Music, on Spotify, whatever. We're not paid to say any of this, but the reason why I want to bring it up is because it's curated by Asian artists, musicians. It is so good. It's definitely worth checking out. So please, please, please go check it out. It is just so awesome to see Asian art in full blast right now, and I'm just ecstatic just to even think about that kind of stuff. And if you go on Marvel's Twitter, I think it is, they also have some amazing custom posters that they've been posting for Shang-Chi made by Asian artists as well. So there's a lot of Asian love going on, and I'm feeling it right now. So if you enjoyed the movie, let us know. Like, we didn't make the movie, but I'm thrilled just to hear people's thoughts about it. So we'll see you on another episode of Talking Tom next week. Bye, everyone.